What's up, rock stars, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys really enjoyed the last video of the first startup of Veronica. It is the first startup since like 2015, so that was major for me. Again, shout out to Big Papa Fire, y'all, for pulling up on P-Rock's Garage and helping us out in a major way. So here's what we have on the agenda today. Transmission problems, right? So the converter basically isn't shipped properly. So it's really not engaging in the transmission. So when I put it in gear and the car was running, the wheels like barely turning. And I was like, what? And I gave it a little gas and the RPMs went up, but the wheels were still like barely turning. And I was like, what? So then I got up under there and I pulled the flywheel, or the converter bolts out. You know how it goes through the flywheel into the converter? I pulled those bolts out. And so now I'm spinning the converter, you know, by itself, and it's spinning, and it feels like it's, you know, good. And I said, what? So then I was like, let me like shake and like wiggle the converter just to make sure it was seated all the way inside the transmission. I was like, what? And then I shimmied it and shook it, and then it goes clunk. And I was like, what? It was like literally a gap like this between the converter and the flywheel. And I was like, what? So basically, what I had to do was I had to order shims and longer converter bolts, and also a pilot bushing that goes from the crank to the nose of the converter. I have all the parts over here already. So I know in the past videos, the lighting underneath the car hadn't been that great, trying to show you guys some things. So I'm trying something today. It's really ghetto, but we're not gonna worry about that. I think it's gonna give us the adequate lighting that we need, honestly, to put some quality content out, to show you guys what I'm gonna be doing up under the car. So I've got the trans pan pulled off already, and I have to replace the gasket. One reason why I went ahead and pulled the trans pan off, you see right here in the corner, the gasket was already damaged, and it was seeping a little bit of trans fluid out the side of the pan, and that's no bueno. This is the gap that I was talking about between the converter and the flywheel, right there. So now I have the bolts and the spacers to put this in, but there's also a pilot bushing that goes between the face of the converter and the back of the crankshaft. So what I have to do is I have to pull the bell housing bolts out the transmission. I'm gonna put extra long bolts in on the bottom sides here and on the other side, and put the pan back under the bottom of this, get the jack it up, and then I'll slide the transmission back far enough to where I can do what I need to do up under here, but the long bolts will give the transmission plate a slide back without falling completely out of position. So when I put it back on and bolt it all back up, all I gotta do really is just shove it forward. So we'll be up under the car for today, making something happen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so first things first is the rear end has to come back out. So these clasps right here have to be loosened, and then I have to take the nuts off the end of the shocks, and that should give me enough angle swing to pull the drive shaft out. Once the drive shaft is out on this end, I can pull it out of the back of the transmission back here, and then we'll start loosening the bell housing bolts on the transmission to slide it back. So let's get to work. All right, party people. So we're right side back up for the moment. Got the drive shaft out. So the next thing that we have to do is, I knew this was gonna be a big job today. The next thing that we have to do is start getting these bell housing bolts loosened. And so I want to show you guys just a better look. So this is the gap that I was talking about between the converter and the flywheel. So I have the shim for this, which we're good there. However, I don't know if you guys can see in there, like all the way in the center in there, it's like a little circle. There we go. See that circle? See that circle right there on the end of the flywheel? I mean on the end of the converter going towards the flywheel. Keep that in mind, right? Because that's actually important. So why that's important is because this bushing right here goes on the end of that and then goes into the converter. And these fellas here are the spacers that I'm going to be using to shim between the converter and the flywheel. So next, like I said, I'm gonna work on getting these bell housing bolts out. Once we get these bell housing bolts out, I put the long bolts in on the bottom of the bell housing so I can slide the transmission back. And then once I slide the transmission back, pilot bushing goes in, slide the transmission back forward, put the bell housing bolts back in, converter bolts go in with the shim, drive shaft goes back in, rear end goes back in place, and then we'll move to the front of the motor so we can fix that little oil leak that we have. And everything underneath here should be ready to go. All the trans bolts are out of the bell housing. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to grab a piece of 2x4 in the jack. I'm gonna balance the 2x4 across the cradle of the jack. It's gonna go against the bottom of the trans pan here. And this beautiful UMI red cross member for the trans is gonna be removed. The jack will be supporting the weight of the trans. But I've got these really long bolts right here on that side. And one also, let's see if I can get over here and show you. And one also over on this side. And so what's gonna happen is the jack is gonna balance the weight of the transmission, and with those guide bolts basically in the bell housing, I'll be able to slide back the transmission about a good 6 inches, which would be more than enough space than what I need to go ahead and get this pilot bushing put in, slide the trans back forward, throw the bell housing bolts back in it, and start putting this thing back together. So it's been a long day today. I guess this video is actually gonna be 2 parts, or it might be 2 separate videos. I don't know yet. We'll just have to see how long everything else takes. However, I'm whooped, I'm dirty, I'm beat up, but we did accomplish what we set out to accomplish today. The pilot bushing is in, and the shims and the new converter bolts are in the converter, and the transmission is bolted back up to the back of the engine, and everything pretty much from the engine to the transmission is bolted up. Tomorrow, I still have to pull the harmonic balancer off and see what's going on. I probably pinched that gasket up under the oil pan right up by the timing chain. We'll figure that part out tomorrow. Depending on that, then we'll try to get on the brakes. But I think that I'm just gonna leave the drive shaft out for now because I don't have my torque arm bar on yet, but I'm going to go ahead and get the torque arm bar purchased and put everything back in as a unit so that we can go ahead and start driving this car if we can. So just to show you guys what we got done today, I know it's still a little dirty up under here, but whatevs, it'll get all cleaned up So we got the shims in for the converter, as you can see. And then if you look closely, right in there, you see that shiny piece in there with the grease on it? That is the pilot bushing right in there. I used to have wiggle and wobble in the converter. No more. We are solid and we're good to go. So like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and probably purchase the torque arm tonight. Probably gonna go with the UMI to keep it the way that it is, and get the torque arm bar put in. I still got a lot of suspension stuff to do, but we can get to that. Now I just put the transmission pan back on because I had the jack put up under it, but I do have a new gasket for the trans pan. So tomorrow I'll put the new trans fluid in it, stuff like that. But I didn't want to do it today because I'm not going to crank the car up today. I'll probably crank it up tomorrow. So I'll do an oil change on it tomorrow, get the braking oil out of the engine, put a fresh filter, fresh oil in it after we get that timing chain cover pulled off, like I said, and tend to that oil leak. So for some strange reason, I lost the rest of the footage ending off this video. So the only thing I want to address really quickly is just the fact that everything with the transmission is pretty much good. I just have to put the trans pan back on with the clean gasket and seal it up and take care of the oil leak on the front of the motor. We're moving pretty quickly with this project as far as getting the drivetrain button up and everything together. So we were getting super close to getting the car back on the road for the first drive, and I'm super excited for it. I have not driven this car since 2016, so every day is a day we get closer. But you guys already know what it is. It's your boy, Small Block P-Rock, and this is P-Rock's Garage. I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so and continue to like and comment and hit the notification bell so you guys are the first ones to know when we drop new content right here on P-Rock's Garage. As always, I'm ready to rock. If you guys are ready to roll, and we'll see you in the next one.
P-Rock's Garage. No, we don't fade, we don't flash.